Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Guys Talking Sports. It is another preview.
Are we going to behave this week?
We're going to try and behave.
You were out of control last week.
You're just stubborn as a mule and don't listen.
You were.
I think it was two stubborn mules butting heads there for a minute. But I don't think we'll be as passionate about this topic, but we'll try and be as unbiased as we possibly can be as Gamecock fans.
Yeah.
On today's episode, we're going to review, kind of preview, what's been going on in the offseason for the Clemson Tigers.
Yep.
Again, we are Gamecock fans, so we aren't going to be as passionate about this.
Yeah, I think so.
But we're going to put the information out there, and there are a few things within their program that, pique my interest.
And I think even for Clemson, we'll talk about this later. I'm pretty sure all Clemson fans are pretty frustrated with Dabo's kind of approach to the portal.
Let's jump back for a second, talk about their season. Obviously, it's not the season that most Clemson fans have come to expect.
Yeah,
9-4 on the year. No ACC championship game.
I think it's their first one in a hot minute.
Yeah, it's been a while since they weren't in the ACC championship. So, I think, and Dabo even had the quote at some point in the year about
buy the stock.
First he had the quote about having more appreciation.
Yeah,
is in the expectation or whatever it was, basically saying that they needed to be appreciative of what happened in the past and kind of tame their expectations. But the thing is, when you have that kind of success in the past, it's hard to tell fans to tame their expectations.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you poll any Clemson fan, anytime you have a winning season and a bowl win, I think there's always, as Coach Beamer would say, find some joy, and I think they can be excited, but maybe not satisfied with what they've come to expect with going to the ACC championship games or being contenders, to be in a college football playoff position. Yeah. But I mean, still 9 wins is not a bad season.
It's not.
I'd kill for that.
Yeah, especially I think what ticked Clemson fans off is when he made that statement. It's like it's in the middle of the year, man. Like we're in the middle of the pack. It's easier to sit back, 2 or 3 months. Now we're in February and look back and say, you know what? In retrospect, it was a good year. Obviously, it's not what we've come to. Yeah. Be accustomed to, but it was still a good year, especially with all the changes that they've had, with offensive coordinator. They've had some players leave, kind of thing.
I will say this for South Carolina and Clemson, their head coaches and Beamer and Sweeney, they're both very passionate coaches. Yes. They wear their emotions on their sleeves.
They're very honest.
I wouldn't say that they don't think before they speak. Right. But at the same time, they're going to tell you what they think, and you may not always agree with it. And you'll always see Coach Beamer kind of not correct himself, but he'll kind of walk back his comments a little bit sometimes. Yeah, because he's always whether it was a win or a loss, he's pretty fired up after games and says a few things. Right. And then when he has his weekly press conference on like Tuesdays or Wednesdays, or even his Sunday night teleconference call, he always tends to walk back his comments. But credit to Dabo. I mean, he stands firm in what he believes. He's not going to change it.
He very rarely goes back and tries to save face or anything like that. He tells you what he feels, and like I said, he's honest and he's passionate. And sometimes I think that the way that they react to situations, they react like fans do. Yeah. Which is a good thing too, because it shows they're not just there for a paycheck. They're there because they care. They're there because they truly believe in, he truly believes in Clemson University. Yeah. And their program. So they did have some notable wins this year. I think the best one was that Notre Dame win at the time. I think Notre Dame may have been top 10.
I'm tired of this is getting off topic, but the fact that Notre Dame is just continuously ranked as high as they are is a joke.
Yeah, it's kind of like Duke and North Carolina in basketball.
It's like, I mean, if it's earned, it's earned. But at the same time, no offense to Clemson, but Notre Dame had no business losing that game.
No, they did.
The way you could talk about how Clemson's offense was this year. It's not. It seems of years past, ever since Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson came through, the Clemson's really had to rely on their elite defense.
Yeah.
And they don't miss a beat on defense, but their offense just isn't it. And I'm sure it might come with time with the new, like I said, a new coordinator. But yeah, I mean, that was a big win for for Clemson. But I just don't understand the hype around Notre Dame. It's like in college basketball with the Blue Bloods, like you said. Yeah. It's just they're Notre Dame. They're always going to be ranked for
their
no
wins mean
reason.
so much more, and their losses don't mean as much as they would to another program. They beat North Carolina 31-20. At the time, North Carolina was, kind of on a roll, I think. And then obviously they beat South Carolina. No matter the record, that's always a notable win.
Yeah.
For either school, that's always going to be a notable win.
I think if you ask any Carolina Clemson fan, if you maybe not even win a single game that year, but your one win is that rivalry game, I think you're going to be happy.
Yep. And then obviously they capped off their year with a Gator Bowl victory over Kentucky, 38-35. But you talked about the offense, and that's they did have a coaching change at the beginning of the year when they hired Garrett Riley to be their offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
I don't think that with all the hype that was around Garrett Riley at the time, they had just he had just coached TCU in a national championship game, and then he comes into Clemson as this, like offensive guru or, the next big guy, in the offensive game. And it just wasn't that.
Yeah. And I think, there, like I said, there's a lot of hype around him. He was I think the Broyles Award winner, which is this top assistant coming into Clemson.
Yeah.
But you never really know when you have an assistant, even though he had the title of offensive coordinator under, the coach at TCU, his name's just slipping my mind for some reason. What did he really have full control of calling that offense?
I don't think so.
Or was it something, kind of how when Gus Malzahn's at Auburn as the head coach, somebody was the offensive coordinator, had that title. Were they the offensive coordinator? No.
Right.
And you get on your own and you don't have that kind of safety net of that head coach at TCU. All right, I got to look up his name. It's going to drive me wild.
From all accounts that I, read and stuff, before Garrett Riley, even when he was the big name, and he hadn't even accepted the job at Clemson yet, all the talk is that like he wasn't the full
Sonny Dykes.
He wasn't the full play caller. Yeah. That he was basically, I don't think it was a situation where it was like Andy Reid and then his offense coordinator where they kind of game plan and then Andy Reid calls the plays throughout the game.
Yeah.
I think it was a little 50-50. And then Sonny Dykes would basically, in certain situations, he would have more control. Mm-hmm. And so I think this was Garrett Riley's first full year of like, all right, this is your offense, run the plays that you want to run.
Yeah.
And you could tell towards the end of the year, I think they looked a little bit better offensively, but it was kind of like just the same old offense that Clemson's. There was nothing different with like the bubble screens and stuff like that.
I think they quit asking Cade Klubnik to be something he's not. He's not going to be an efficient 30. Throwing it 30 to 40 times a game and completing 60 to 70% of it. He's just not that guy. And, the quarterback, DJ Uyunglele, was not that guy. No. Once they started relying more on their run game and using Maffa and Shipley, the offense kind of picked up, if you can, within, certain degrees. So, it's a learning curve for him, but, and this will go hand in hand with kind of Dabo's approach to the portal. Is they don't really have that many weapons on the outside like they normally do. The receivers, are decent and good, but they're not what they normally are.
Right.
And so I think it's a little bit of both where you have a first time true coordinator calling plays and learning on the job. So, I mean, hopefully, next season's an improvement for them.
I think that it will be. I think that, again, now Garrett Riley, he's had a completely full offseason with the team and with Cade. He's had, obviously pretty much a full year's worth of tape of himself to go back and review and say, all right, look, this was 100% me. Where did I thrive? Where did I, not do as well?
Yeah.
To kind of go back and look on. but I think the full off season will definitely help.
And I think
both him and then now he just knows, okay, I've got a full season of seeing what Cade can do.
Yeah.
And what we can expect of him.
And I think another thing to keep in mind is what's Dabo's philosophy with running an offense.
Yeah.
It may not be what Sonny Dykes has at TCU. It may be a different philosophy he wants to run at Clemson, and that may have been an adjustment for Garrett Riley himself as well. I don't like bringing up South Carolina when we're doing these kind of episodes, but one thing Shane Beamer said when he was hiring after Satterfield left, he's like, I want a guy that runs this type of offense with this type of philosophy that I like to run or that I want to run. So Dabo's philosophy may be a whole lot different than Sonny Dykes' philosophy. So it may have been a huge adjustment for Garrett Riley and, the personnel he had to work with. So
I think the big thing for Garrett Riley was just having full 100% control. Like you're calling every single play is, short scheme. The way that Dabo's pretty much always operated is he's never said anything like that, the way that Beamer has, saying that he wants. I think that he truly just says, I like this guy as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I trust him to run whatever he wants to run.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be, the type of coach that Dabo is just like, all right, I believe in this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he may be completely different than what we had 2 years ago in the type of offense, but I don't care because I believe in this type of guy.
Yeah.
And, the thing is, you just got to go in now and pretty much change the way you recruit and stuff like that to get the players that fit that type of personnel and scheme and offensive play calling that Garrett Riley wants to do.
Let's hold because that would go in. I'm very fired up to talk about
some notable losses just to wrap up their season recap. Obviously, they lost a home opener to Duke.
Mm-hmm.
At the time,
away opener. They played at Duke.
Yeah. Sorry. Season opener to Duke. And that was kind of a surprise at the time. Nobody knew kind of what Duke was going to be. They were obviously on the rise, not on the rise. But
yeah, they had a good coach. I mean, I think that game got Duke's head coach Mike Elko the job at Texas A&M.
Right.
When they decided to move on from Jimbo.
FSU, beating them.
Clemson could have won that game.
Yeah, that was a Clemson beating themselves, not FSU beating them.
Yeah. Agree.
Kind of the same thing with Miami.
Another thing that Clemson struggled with this season was fumbling the ball, and I think it was just sitting around Will Shipley. They fumbled the ball a lot in key areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed like it was they were making a good drive, get down to the red zone, fumble the ball down or something like that.
So I'm pretty, I think I remember seeing it at the time where I think credit Dabo for making the changes when he did.
Mm-hmm.
I wish Beamer would do it more efficiently. But I think I saw a lot of stuff where people may have wanted to move on from C.J. Spiller as the running backs coach.
Yeah.
Because I know there was like some, issues with him and Shipley. Or maybe not issues, but you could see some frustrations with Will Shipley.
That was, I think, middle of the year. I mean, Shipley was having a good year, but he wasn't getting any touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he was the workhorse that got you there,
Yeah.
and then they would get down, within the 10, and then they would switch to Maffa, who is more of a bruiser of a back.
Yeah.
But I think Shipley was getting fed up with him with the switching out because it was like, man, I got to break a 30-yard run for a touchdown to even get a chance to score because if I get y'all here, you're just taking me out.
Yeah, exactly.
And they did kind of switch that up towards, like I said, they made an adjustment, with how they switched out players because they did start using Shipley more on goal line stands and stuff like that. So,
yeah, and I mean Shipley announced, he declared for the NFL draft, so
it's all on
Maffa's really going to be the focal point. I mean, outside with returning the most experience at least. But yeah, I mean they switched up the O-line coach and the defensive end coach.
Yeah, so coaching, they lost the offensive line coach and defensive end coach Thomas Austin and Lemanski Hall, and then they replaced him with Matt Luke and Chris Rumph, who this is his second time at Clemson.
I think they knocked the ball out of the park with the offensive line hire. Matt Luke, who I'm pretty positive was the head coach at Ole Miss a couple years back. I think he's known as a very great recruiter. I don't know if he's a great offensive line coach. It's kind of tough to follow with non-coordinator positions like who's a great position coach. But yeah, like I said, Chris Rumph was there, I think, through some of their glory days when they were at their peak. And then Matt Luke, who's never been to, I don't believe has ever been to Clemson, but I think, Dabo's replaced who he hired were pretty damn
and I
good
know the
hires.
offensive line was kind of a weak spot for them as well this year, in terms of consistency and just how they played.
Yeah.
Sometimes Cade was running for his life.
And that was supposed to be one of their strongest suits coming into the offseason. I think, Dabo saw kind of some writing on the wall in areas he needed to improve. I wish he would, if I was a Clemson fan, I wish he would take that approach to the portal.
Yeah, and speaking of the portal, we'll jump into that. They lost 3 players, which
they lost more than
they
3,
lost more than 3,
but these are notable,
right? And that's the other thing that kind of, and obviously this is just a local, within the state of South Carolina, but more or less people that we know and just interact with.
Yeah,
South Carolina obviously, and it happens everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
and it's the same thing I had to tell you with fans talk junk everywhere. It happens everywhere that just an influx of players leave at one time.
Yeah,
you may not even know who those guys were. They never saw the field.
Yep.
They were red shirts. This, that, and the other. And it's just like, all right, well, South Carolina, they lost 15 players. What's going on over there? And it's like, all right, well, if Clemson lost 12. We're right there in the same boat.
Yeah,
and you're losing basically within those 12 to 15. You're losing 3 to 4 notable players.
Yeah, and I mean Clemson had some big notable players. I mean they had Mukuba, who's he's at Texas now.
Yep.
But he was one of their top DBs. I mean they lost 2 good DBs. One committed to Missouri. I think Toriano. Apologize if we mispronounce his first name. And then probably their most notable receiver.
Yeah.
I think coming into the season, I think they expected Antonio Williams to have a big season. I know the freshman Tyler Brown had a big season, but Beaux Collins was probably one of their most.
I think he was the one they expected the most out of.
Yeah. And it just never really worked out for him there.
Yeah. And he's going to Notre Dame, which is a top-tier program, always top 10.
But they had a couple more leave. Yeah, Notre Dame. But it wasn't people that just...
Again, you're going to have, the people that just, they weren't getting play time at all. You probably don't even know their names.
Yep.
There's 120 players on these teams. You're not going to know all of them.
No.
And they're going to enter, and they're going to go sometimes to smaller schools to get, more play time.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Or it's NIL related. And I think for 2 of them, it was NIL related.
Yeah. And then this is kind of like the crux of
this is what I'm most excited to speak about.
Here is because they had those players leave. You had the notable players, leave. The most notable transfer portals for Clemson were none.
Additions.
They added nobody.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure when I was kind of looking to, I knew coming in they didn't get any, but I was like, let me just double check.
Yep.
But so we don't like idiots on here. And I even texted a buddy of ours, none.
Yeah.
Zilch. And honestly, I think this is where Clemson's kind of falling behind the 8 ball.
I agree.
Where these teams don't have to depend on getting 2 and 3 good high school recruiting classes to compete with these teams now.
Yep. If
you get a team with a good NIL collective like a Florida State, who for the better part of almost a decade has not really been what they are since they won their national championship with Jameis Winston. But it just took one or two, one good offseason of transfer
money.
Portal additions with their NIL collective. Yep. And, they won the AC championship this year, and many argue should have been in the college football playoff. Yeah. And, you don't have the luxury of just being able to poach players out of high school, or maybe not poach is the right word, but get kids in from high school. Because, it's very rare when they come in and they're ready day one to compete at this level. You may get a freak of an athlete every, maybe 1 or 2 out of a class. Mm-hmm. But in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing compared to when, another team in the ACC gets somebody that's got more experience and you can argue maybe better at that time playing, getting out of the portal.
And here's the thing is, the way that Dabo handles this situation I don't agree with it, but I totally respect how he does it. He said, look, and it's not that they don't pursue players. How heavily they pursue them, I don't know, but I know that they did, go after some offensive linemen, maybe another player, but, Dabo said, we're not going to get into a bidding war. If they want to go somewhere else because they can make more money than to come here, fine, go do that. And I respect that, but the thing is like you said, eventually you got to start playing the game.
You're going to get left behind, and
nobody. Here's the thing: is nobody really, for the most part, nobody likes the NIL. Nobody likes the transfer portal for how it is, how it's been ran, because it does. It sucks that you're constantly losing players, and you get in these bidding wars, and you lose players because of money and not necessarily play time or what the program is offering. It's just it's a money thing.
But I think you can be successful. Look at South Carolina and Shane Beamer. I mean, the past 2 seasons haven't, in terms of losing players to the portal, haven't been good to us.
Right.
But Beamer's and his staff have done a great job. So, and they're not going to get into a bidding war.
No.
But I think depending what position you're trying to recruit for, it's not all about money. Like, you can give them the NIL people to discuss, like, hey, this is what we can get you.
Right. And
then if they come back and say, well, North Carolina's giving me this. Okay, well, we're not going to do that.
Right.
And that's what Dabo's, beliefs are. But I truly don't believe he's going after them that hard, though.
Yeah, I don't think that he's pursuing them as
I think he's just doing it because he has to.
Right. I don't think that he's pursuing them as hard as these other coaches, these other programs who are just saying, look, we got to fill these needs. And sometimes it is like those explosive positions, or like a quarterback position, or offensive line, where you can go and get an experienced offensive lineman that's played 3 or 4 years in college football versus somebody who's been playing.
Because there's and we kind of talked about this last episode, where, you have more NIL value as a transfer than a high school kid, because you've got tape in college.
Right.
Whereas high school, you don't, and you're not always going to translate to the next level.
Yeah.
Some of these kids are just very highly recruited, and I think it does them a disservice, because some of them don't deserve, or maybe even warrant, having a ranking like they get. I know there's a lot that goes into it, but again, it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
Whereas you can get somebody that you have game tape on. The fact that Clemson got 0 portal additions is astounding to me.
Yeah. Especially for a program that heralds themselves as being top tier, that, should be competing in the playoffs every year. And this. But
they don't lose a lot. I'll give them that. They don't lose a lot in terms of, I guess, playmakers.
Yeah.
They didn't have a big list.
But the thing is like, you obviously underachieved from what expectations are from the fans.
Yeah.
You went 9-4 this year. Mm-hmm. You did lose notable players, and you replaced them with no. And the thing is, like, with, like you said, there's game tape from the high school as well. But the thing is like, the college players, you're seeing them play college players.
Yeah.
You're seeing them play people that are still probably going to be playing, at that level, where you might have a 5-star wide receiver lining up against a cornerback, and, he may have a 250-yard game with 3 touchdowns, but that cornerback is never going to play football again after high school.
Yeah. I mean, you look at their competition, you may get a quarterback who plays, I don't know, let's just say like big time private school ball, where they play against players that 99% of them are not going to play at the next level.
Right.
And there's some that have no business being out there, and you can't always help or control that. But again,
you look at someone like, I don't want to knock him, but like Jordan Birch, he was, one of the top recruits in the nation.
Yeah.
And it just never panned out.
Yeah.
Even at Oregon, I think that he may have had a little bit, better season this year than he did at South Carolina, but it was still never like, all right, that was a top 10 player in a recruiting class.
And I think sometimes we as fans, maybe sometimes get caught up in stats,
right,
compared to what they do to impact the game. But again, I feel like, and Clemson fans in the comments, correct us if you think we're wrong, but I still think Dabo has that mentality of we're going to recruit, because they still do a dang good job with high school recruiting. But again, you can't always bank on these kids being day one ready to play major college football. And I think that's something where at their peak where they could afford to do that, because they didn't have the transfer portal. And now you don't really have that luxury.
Even with the kids that, I mean, your number one recruits in the nation, and you know, it's very tough for them to come in and just make a huge impact.
Yeah.
Especially now with NIL, because you can have players where not NIL, the transfer portal, because you could have players beforehand that were playing, let's just say like a Juice Wells, for example.
Yeah.
He was playing, at James Madison before, and before the transfer portal, he may have never ended up at South Carolina and now Ole Miss just because, he never would have been seen, pursued, this, that, and the other. And so then you may have a wide receiver that comes in from high school and makes more of an impact than they would now, because you have players from Coastals, James Madison's, Liberties, schools like that are coming up, that weren't looked at in high school.
Yeah.
Go and play, at these smaller schools, and then make the jump to, the South Carolina, the Clemsons, the Alabama, Georgias. They're even taking the place now of what the impact would be that these high school players may have been making 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah. And another thing is, like I said, with Juice Wells, is these players don't have to sit out a year.
Right.
So, I mean, you get one free transfer as an undergrad, and then you can transfer again as a grad student. So, again, it's just the times have changed. And if I was a Clemson fan, even though we did have a successful season, I still feel we're behind the 8 ball in terms of what's kind of ruling and dominating college football right now. Yeah. Whereas, I mean, as you can tell, South Carolina had a smaller recruiting class. This had 22. Clemson had a good recruiting class. Right. I think they ranked, depending which publication you looked at, with what I looked at, I think they were 15th maybe, which is still dang good. But you look at 6 years ago, was rare if they were outside like the top 4.
And that's the other thing that kind of makes no sense to me is like, okay, you focus more on high school recruiting, and you just don't want to deal with the transfer portal at all. And that'd be one thing. And again, you still don't know with these rankings and, where a team ranks, based on the stars and stuff. We can, not put as much emphasis on that now.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to do transfer portal at all, you got to have like a 1, 2, 3 in the nation recruiting class to say like, all right, we don't want to deal with transfers because we believe so much in these high school players. Yeah. And okay, you're top 25, but you're like middle of the pack. Yeah. You're 15.
I mean,
and you got to deal with the Georgias and Texas and Alabamas that are 1, 2, 3 in recruiting, and then also 1, 2, 3 in transfers. And you're going to tell me that you got 0 transfers with a 15, but you're supposed to be the elite of the elite. Yeah. It just doesn't transfer.
And NIL is affecting high school recruiting classes as well. Right. Maybe not to a specific degree, because I truly think the high school kids don't have as much of, unless you're, the number 1 overall recruit,
an Archie Manning,
or
somebody that has a big name,
where they can kind of get in kind of somewhat of a bidding war. Right. But yeah, I think it's going to affect them a little bit on the high school level as well. But again, if I'm a Clemson fan, I'm nervous about that because it's here to stay. Like, it's not going anywhere. Like, it's like you have to adapt or die.
And unfortunately for them too, it's like you have the schools that before Clemson kind of went on their elite run, you have Florida State, you have Miami, you have these schools that were like
not good.
The Blue Bloods back in the day, though.
Yeah.
And they've always had that name. It's always the U. Florida State. So if you say, all right, now all of these fans that have always pulled for us and aren't necessarily happy with the way the program's going can just throw a ton of money, especially in the state of Florida where you have all these retirees that are coming down here and they can make money.
They got some rich donors.
And you can even have donors that never even cared about Florida State and just retire to Florida. Their buddies like Florida State. They get into it. They throw their money at it. And now you got to deal with that and them getting transfers. Yeah. And you can see, like, they're going to start coming back on the rise. And if you're not – again, I can respect you wanting to stand your ground, but if and you may not like the way that the game is played with transfers and NIL, but this is how the game's played now, and you can either play it or you can get washed out.
Do you ever see Dabo, in your opinion, leaving within the next few years? Because I mean, it's not rare when, especially now, where head football coaches in college football are leaving. They're taking assistant spots. They're taking
the bad thing for Dabo is like there's, he's not going to play the game no matter where he goes.
Yeah.
Unless he starts doing it at Clemson. So if he's going to start doing the transfer thing, I think that he needs to do it at Clemson and try and just build from there.
Yeah.
But the thing for him is like he's never been a coordinator before, so it's hard for him to. You can't make the jump to NFL like say the coach from Boston College did, where he makes the jump to be the DC at the Green Bay Packers, because you've never done that. So for Dabo, he would have to almost try and land a head coaching job somewhere. Yeah. And the bad thing is if you're going 8-5, 9-4, in college, and you're not making the playoffs every year, you're not going to be top of the name list for these NFL teams to try and make that jump.
And I truly think the NFL is kind of done with these college coaches being NFL coaches. Unless you have
because
prior experience.
Yeah, he's been in the NFL before. He's been an NFL head coach that played in the Super Bowl before.
He was in the NFL before he was even at Stanford.
Right, exactly.
So I don't count him because I think he's more of an NFL guy.
Right. Or somebody like Matt Rule who had NFL experience. Yeah. I'm just saying, they're those types of guys who kind of started NFL, moved to college, and then they've done it before.
Yeah, like Matt Rule was like he wasn't a big time NFL coach before he kind of got his big break at Temple in college.
And the other thing, if Dabo, he doesn't like. He wants the players to choose to come to Clemson because it's Clemson, not because they can get money or this, that, and the other.
I hate to say it,
that's how it would be in the NFL if he made that jump. Like there's players that they're going to come to the Panthers or the Cowboys or whoever because that's who offered them the most money.
Yeah,
and that's most of the time how it works.
But that's unfortunately it's what college football is turning into. I hate it. It's the worst because
the thing. And like I said,
it's getting to the point where there's really no difference in college football and NFL football.
The only difference is we know exactly how much money these players are making in the NFL. There's a contract that's stipulated. Fans can see it. Everybody knows what the contract is versus college. Nobody knows. Like we said,
because they're not
last
employees
week,
of the school.
We can get a value because we talked about it last week with Stone Blanton. And then after the episode, I sent like, all right, well, On 3 says that his NIL value is like 75,000.
Yeah.
But we don't know. He could have been getting 100. He could have been getting 50. We really don't know. That's just kind of what they value him at as a player.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of what you're seeing with the NCAA football game, where if you're in the game, I think you get like a $600 maybe stipend and a copy of the game. Well, they can't, and I don't know what show I was listening to, but I think the reason why they can only do that is because they're not actually employees. Right. So I think in terms of tax reasons, they can't give them more than that.
Just give them 1099.
But then they'd have to be employees.
Yeah.
So it's I said this last episode, in next 5 to 10 years, college football is going to look very different.
Yeah.
I mean, you're already seeing it with the college football playoff expanding. They're already talking about going to 16 teams now. And the bowl games are losing value. Honest to God, I think they should just do away with them.
If you do a 16-team playoff, you got to. You got to just do away with some of these bowl games.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. Nobody's going to watch them because now they're becoming even less valuable.
And really, the only reason these teams that are like these 6-6 teams, 7-5, and they want to do those bowl games, not necessarily play the bowl game, they want that extra 3 to 4 weeks of practice. Yeah. And they can have the high school players come in. So just if you want to expand the playoffs,
do that. But then
get rid of the bowl games and say, look, if you reached a certain mark, if you were 6-6 and you were bowl eligible, well, instead of playing a game, you can still have that time of practice with your players.
I think everybody should just be able to do it. Like,
or just give them that.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. it's a difficult kind of thing to talk about because there's really nobody really knows what they're doing, but that falls on the NCAA.
Right.
But again, that's why I said in 5 to 10 years, probably even sooner than that, the NCAA is not going to exist in the realm of college football.
Right.
These Big Five power conferences are going to
just split,
roll out, and they'll have their own commissioner. It'll be Greg Sankey from the SEC. They'll have their own set guidelines and rules. It's going to look very different.
Yeah. And then just to wrap it all up for Clemson.
But overall, good season for
them. Yeah. And then, like I said, overall, pretty good recruiting class. I know that Sammy Brown, that was a big name that kind of stuck out.
I think that's their
that was their key
crowning jewel for their high school class.
But a lot of a couple 5 stars, a lot of 4 stars. Again, they recruited well.
They don't get as many 5 stars as they used to.
Exactly.
But again, I think that falls back on the NIL.
Yep. Just to jump out or jump off of Clemson into some other things happening around
There's a lot
nation.
that kind of happened this past weekend, or in this past week since we last recorded.
Another court storming.
Yep. It involved Duke losing at Wake Forest, Kyle Filipowski, and it kind of looked bad in time, but as video footage comes out, kind of like the Caitlin Clark situation, he initiated it.
Right.
But I think it begs the question, what is it going to take for something to change? I think fans should be allowed to storm the court, and I guess it's more noticeable in basketball because in football, you've either got to get over like a thing of bushes, or you've got to jump down like a 6-foot wall.
Yep.
Whereas in basketball, if you're in the student section, the difference between me as a fan and the court is the gap between us sitting.
Yeah.
So they've got access to the floor more. They just need to find a way to get the opposing team off the court before they do it. Like if it's a blowout. Also, I think storming the court's kind of lost its thing because you just do it.
Everybody just does it all the time.
If you beat a number 15 team, people are storming the court. Right. I think it's kind of lost its mojo, but I still think they should be able to do it.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out a way to get the opposing team off the court whether it's just like, well, shut up, don't do that crap. But if it's one thing if it's a last second shot where you can't really control that. But like in the situation with South Carolina beating Kentucky this year, we knew within 2 minutes we were winning that game. So if it's like 2 seconds left, just get the Kentucky players off the court.
Right.
Like you can set like the ropes and stuff up, get them off the court, and then let the time run out and let them storm the court.
Most of the time in a game like the South Carolina-Kentucky one, you have a player that's pretty much just dribbling it out for 20, 25 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, if they know that, there's not going to be a change in possession, just go ahead.
Yeah.
Get them off. But again, you're going to run into those situations where you do have the last second buzzer beater just bang hits it.
Yeah.
And that's your game winner.
Yeah, I mean that you can't really control because I truly think it's majority of the fans are there to celebrate, but there's some people and they take it. I think they take advantage of it to like get in the faces of the players or the coaches and say something to them. And knowing these players can't do anything or say anything to them without getting in trouble, that's what I don't think is right because I hold this position very firmly. I don't think fans should be able to do whatever they want at these games.
Right.
Like you got to be able to have some repercussions for what you do. Again, they should be able to storm the court, but I, as a fan, shouldn't be able to come up to you, Steven, as a player, smack talk you, put my phone in your face after you just got beat. You're still emotional about the game.
They're baiting them.
Yeah, and I don't think that's right. Again, you don't see it in professional sports. There's a big difference between the two, but I think there's just got to be a solution where you can address it without eliminating the court storming.
Yeah, they definitely needs to be fixed. How to fix it, I have no clue.
Yeah,
I mean, that's tough.
I mean, some people. I mean, I feel like most college football talking heads or media or whatever just want it banned outright.
Right. Honestly, they're really
it's going to happen.
There's really only one way to fix it, and that is to just ban it because it's tough to
because in the SEC
there's so many different situations that could happen, buzzer beater versus, okay, even in the situation, like I said, let's just say South Carolina takes a possession with 27 seconds left and they dribble it out. Okay, well, if they don't take a shot or pass it, it's a shot clock violation that transfers over to Kentucky, and then they got to dribble it out for three. You have situations like that where it's just so.
Well, I think in that situation, they'll just, in terms of like the rules of the game, it's a violation, but I just think they're just like, all right, let's.
So that comes into they got to change up the rules of the game where you concede a game or something like that if you do have possession. Then you get into, well, what if, the spread is -12 and Kentucky takes that shot clock violation, hits a three, and that changes how much, millions of dollars.
Well, that's not going to.
That's a factor, though. Trust me, they might not say it publicly, but that's a factor. And Vegas will get involved with that.
But it's not going to, in those specific situations, again, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. Like, you can't just play what-if hypotheticals with it.
But I think in a situation like that, there's so many what-if hypotheticals that the only way to fix it is either to say they can do it whenever or they can't do it at all. I mean, really, it's going to come down to that's kind of like the only fix.
Because, you'll see a coach call a timeout just to get like a specific player in if it's like a senior night, but tell them like, hey, we're not stopping. Let me just change them out. In terms of you bringing up the example of like a shot clock, I don't think that's going to play a big factor.
But there's so many hypotheticals and what if and all of these different things that
this is turning into the debate last week.
No, I just think that when you look at it in the grand scheme of things with so many different things that could happen,
it's going to be outlawed. It's going to happen.
Exactly. That really is the only way that I can, obviously you could sit here for hours and days and weeks and try and figure out a plan. But when you just look at it from a holistic standpoint and the outside view, it just looks like the only way to fix it is to just ban it.
Because, the SEC, you get fined for it. So clearly that's not the issue.
Yeah.
And honest to God, universities love paying it.
Right.
Because
most of the time when you do, you're getting on Sports Center, you're getting
and it excites your student body because it's majority of the time it's the students that are going out onto the court. Yeah. It's not some 60-year-old retired guy, who's in the middle rows. It's the students that are running out there.
Yeah. Again, I just think I like it. I like the court storming, but obviously there's got to be you either got to figure out some crazy way of fixing it, or they're just going to end up banning it.
Yeah, because I don't think it's right that they can tone or do whatever they want to the opposing players, and they can't do anything.
Yeah. Speaking of baiting and toning, they love to taunt and bait Cam Newton.
What is that, dude?
This is the first time I think that it's escalated to a fight. But you see it all the time at his camps where these kids are constantly talking trash to Cam Newton about, how his career ended, money, whatever. I've seen multiple clips throughout the years since he's retired of these kids, talking trash to him and him as a grown adult talking back. Yeah. And I think sometimes obviously this shouldn't escalate to this point.
But nobody really knows what led to
nobody
this point.
knows on this one. There was no with all the other ones you've seen videos of like what the kids have said to him and what he said in return.
But my thing is and I think Shannon Sharp and Stephen A. and I forgot who the third person was. But man, it looks bad because you got Cam Newton who's taking time out of his day in life to put on this event for these teams. And I don't know if it's even these kids represented a high school because I think they had like a group name. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're associated with the high school at all or if they're just if 7-on-7 is just like a thing now where it's not specifically related to high school football. Yeah. But I just don't understand why I don't know. I think it's just the day and age of social media where you're trying to get clout or a name for yourself, and you think going up to Cam Newton, who I think would agree didn't like the way his career ended. Yeah. I'm surprised this hasn't happened to Lamar Jackson, the way he runs and gets it. But like I think Cam Newton's body just kind of gave up on him. Like his strength, his weakness, or excuse me, his passing was never his strength. Right. And I think that eventually caught up to him where he couldn't run anymore. But man, like I just don't understand doing that. And people were making jokes. His hat didn't fall off. in it. But I'm just curious what led up to that. Like, did something happen before?
Nobody
truly knows.
No,
or did this group just run up on them and try to, fight them?
Yeah, like I said, it's happened, not the fighting, but the toning and the back and forth between him and fans, players, whatever, camp participants. But it's never escalated to this. But every other time you've been at, there's been footage or something where you can hear them say what they've said to each other. But here it was just like, all right, the only video you've seen is the fight.
But it goes back to kind of the court storming. Like, these players have every right to defend themselves and stick up for themselves.
Yeah. Nobody knows. I think it's crazy.
His hat didn't fall off, though.
His hat didn't fall off.
They said that's his his strength, like his kryptonite. If you take that off, he's not as strong as he is.
It's like if you cut Samson's hair.
Yeah.
NCAA football is coming back, video game. I know a lot of people are excited about that. I probably won't be playing it.
You got to have a next-gen console, so like a PS5 or whatever the newest Xbox is.
I got a PS4 and it's in the attic.
I think it's the Xbox. They're just expensive. They're like $500-$600 still, and they came out 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people are excited about that though.
I think a lot of people are excited about what's going to be in the game.
Yeah,
I don't think you'll be able to. It's not going to be as in depth as people I think want it to be. Because I don't think video games are for that anymore. I think that would require a lot of like coding and whatnot,
which they've had a lot of years. It hadn't been put out to put into it, so.
But I don't think they've been developing. No. It's not like a Red Dead Redemption game where it takes them 8-9 years to make it.
Right. And then I know you're excited about this F1 season starting this weekend. Don't even know what that is.
Bahrain, baby. I think it's. I'm talking with a friend of mine. I think it's going to be difficult for Max Verstappen to replicate his last season.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
Oh man, you gotta watch. It's so much fun. Just like how I got you hooked on the Premier League. The great thing about F1 is these people. Majority of their races are in other countries.
Right.
So majority of the time, their races are done by like lunchtime. It's not like NASCAR where it could take 6 hours. I think the max they can go is 2 hours.
Okay.
And it's usually like 50, 60 laps because it's road courses. And they're doing these races
so
or
they
these
do
lap
turn
time.
right.
They do left and right, yeah.
Left and right, okay.
And they're going way faster than NASCAR cars do, which is it's two different types of racing. But, yeah, there's been a lot of off-season noise. The newest season of Drive to Survive just came out. Yeah, dude, I'm pumped.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah, man.
And then just to wrap it up, South Carolina and Clemson baseball teams both took series wins this week. This past weekend, they did both lose one game, but took the series.
Clemson's was
it was tough. Yeah. And then they play each other this weekend, though.
Is it this weekend?
It's this weekend. So you'll have one game in Columbia, one game. I don't even know where the neutral is this year.
I think it's in Columbia. It's at Truist.
Wherever the Fireflies play.
There's multiple Truist Parks names, and I'm pretty sure where the Fireflies play is Truist Park.
Okay. And then, obviously, I'm not sure which one is the Friday. I know the Saturday is always the neutral game. They flip on Friday, Sunday, who's in, if it's at Carolina or Clemson. But they will travel all around this weekend. I think with this series, the way that they do it, I like it. I like the one game at one place, one game at the other, and then one neutral. I just wish that they would move it around more. Like if they would bring it to, let's say, where Francis Marion plays, or bring it to where the Pelicans play. Bring it throughout the state so that more people in certain areas have a chance.
Well, I think they're doing it because it's like a meeting point. It's one thing if it was just a one-off game, but I don't know, like you can't go from Columbia or Clemson on Friday all the way down to Myrtle Beach Saturday. And because they play early. Yeah. Friday night's a night.
Just start in the furthest place, then go to the next, and then go. So if you went to Myrtle Beach, start at Myrtle Beach. Then
but that's why when they play at Clemson on Friday night, normally they play in Greenville Saturday and Columbia on Sunday. I just don't think it'll ever be where they're playing because it's just too far of it.
I think it would be great. I understand that.
I think it'd be great.
That's exactly why they do it. But I think it would be great if you took it to Rock Hill or take it to Myrtle Beach and
Rock Hill. They can play it
somewhere. Find somewhere.
Yeah, I think the way they have it's better or best because it's. I get your standpoint from it. But I don't think they'll ever play at another college campus.
Right.
Because Francis Marion, I don't think their stadium's big enough that could host all of that.
And then last point here, you've been wanting to dog them for the last 2 weeks, but West Ham comes out yesterday, gets a 4-2 victory. Jeroboam with the hat trick, 2 goals in 6 minutes. 2 goals in 6
Big
minutes.
win, and Man U screwed it up against Fulham.
So they're going to make a run here.
No, they're not.
And finish top 4.
Yeah, right.
Nah, if they finish top
and
8, that would be great.
Man U Liverpool's coming to Williams-Brice Stadium in August.
That's huge too.
I got tickets.
Your European tour coming to.
They're not going to know what hits them when that Columbia August heat gets there.
Yeah, it's a good thing they're playing that game at night because
it still don't matter. It's still going to be hot.
Yeah, I think that is pretty cool though that they're bringing over those teams into an area like South Carolina.
That's a big deal. Like
I think it's a big deal too for the Premier League because it kind of boisters the hype of the Premier League to a state like South Carolina where you have
because North Carolina is a big soccer state. I think more specifically Charlotte.
Right.
But these are 2 of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yep.
It's
Man U overhyped. They're like the Yankees, but whatever. A lot of money, a lot of hype, never succeed.
more successful in West Ham.
Hey, but we don't claim to be the best.
You try to be.
Try to be, but don't claim it.
So yeah, it's a big deal, and Liverpool's going to have a new manager at that time because Klopp's retiring at the end of not retiring, but he's leaving Liverpool at the end of this season. Man United's got new minority ownership, so they, Man U may have a new manager. It's going to be. I think the big
thing is like bringing it to a state where soccer's not a prominent, sport, and just kind of building some hype around it. And you got months and months and months to just kind of build it up. So I think it'll be a good event.
August 3rd.
So not really even sure what we're going to talk about next week.
March
Madness is coming up.
Yeah, we're going to do some fun things. Maybe some all-time like top 10 sports movies.
Yeah, change it up a bit.
We'll do some maybe like get into some hypotheticals or do some type of fun things. And then, like I said, when March Madness gets here, MLB starting in April. They're already playing spring training games.
We can definitely do a Braves preview episode.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely do that. Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
So we'll see you next week. I'm not sure what it'll be, but it'll be a fun one.
Yep. See y'all.